It wasn't until she got back from a month-long business trip with her male assistant that Charlotte realized we hadn't spoken in weeks. She'd been swamped dragging him to meetings, walking him through patient case analyses, pushing him to take the lead on procedures. It was only when she finally had a minute to breathe that she noticed her phone had been dead silent. It struck her as odd. For the past 10 years, whenever she was upset, I'd always been the first to apologize, to smooth things over between us. This time, though, when she tried to reach out, she found not just my number blocked, but every text she sent bouncing back with a bright red exclamation mark. Just as she was frowning in confusion, her phone rang. "Charlotte, how come you didn't tell me your wedding was today?" Over the line, she could hear the crash of ocean waves. "I never would have found out if I hadn't seen Liam's location on his social media. How could you not invite me? Did we grow apart or something?" Charlotte's brow furrowed, her grip tightening on the phone. "What are you talking about? What wedding?" Her best friend Sophia was still giggling on the other end. "Oh, don't play dumb. Liam looks so good in a suit. By the way, you better explain everything later, or I'm never talking to you again." After the call ended, Charlotte pulled up the screenshot Sophia had sent. It was a photo of a beach wedding on a tropical island. "He's just doing this to make me jealous," she thought. "Hiring actors to put on a show somewhere." Then it hit her all at once. She remembered the day a month prior. The day the company raffled off that tropical island getaway for two. The host held up the mic and called her out specifically. "So, Dr. Charlotte, who are you taking with you?" Every eye in the room turned to me. Unspoken and unanimous. I smiled back at her, warm and hopeful. But she brushed right past all the stares. Her tone flat and casual. "Give it to him. Ethan's been pulling so many late shifts lately." The male assistant froze, then flushed bright red. The room went quiet for a beat, then erupted in playful whoops and teasing, stoking the energy higher. My best friend James leaned in, voice low and tight. "Didn't we all agree we'd have our weddings on the island this year? How can she forget after a hint that obvious?" I forced a bitter half-smile and shook my head. "It's fine. The promise still stands. I'd keep my word. I'd go to the island. And I'd have that wedding." Charlotte stepped down from the stage, light on her feet. When she passed Ethan's seat, she paused and smiled softly. She held out the envelope with the travel voucher, her expression warm. "Here you go." Ethan blinked, then broke into a shocked, delighted grin as he took it. "Thanks, Charlotte. You're the best. I'll work extra hard to make sure I don't let you down." He even gave her a playful, mock-formal salute. Then he looked up at her, bold and teasing in that easy, young guy way. "Shame I don't have anyone to go with. Though. Seems like a waste of a two-person ticket. Hey, why don't you come with me, Charlotte?" The room went still for a heartbeat. Then the crowd burst into knowing, suggestive laughter. Beside me, James slammed his glass down on the table and started to stand, ready to snap. I grabbed his shoulder and pushed him back into his seat, pasting on a stiff smile. "You're a co-owner now. What would the staff think if you made a scene?" I trust Charlotte. She'd never say yes to that. The words barely left my mouth when I heard Charlotte laugh softly and say, "That depends on how well you work." "Yes, ma'am." Ethan saluted again, drawing more laughs. Charlotte's lips twitched into a small smile. Then she walked over to our table. "Are you kidding me?" James hissed under his breath, still fuming as I held him down. Does she actually not get what he's implying? Or is she just bailing on the promise? We've all been friends for how many years? We made a pact in college, all four of us. Getting married on that island together. Mia and I already have everything booked. We set up this whole raffle just for her. Who else would go through this trouble? And now she's dragging along some random assistant. He was practically seething, seconds away from slamming his fist on the table. I patted his shoulder. "It's fine. Calm down." When he saw how calm I was, he fell silent. But his jaw stayed tight with anger. Charlotte sat down beside me, smoothing her skirt with a graceful flick of her wrist. She must have picked up on the tension, because she glanced between James and me, then smiled soft, calm, the way she always was. She rested her hand over mine, her thumb brushing slow, light circles over my knuckles. "The beach gets so crowded this time of year. And it's not the safest." How about we go to Riverdale for the holidays instead? I slowly pulled my hand away. Not meeting her eyes. No need. I know how busy you are. Her fingers stilled for a second. She didn't push it. Just gave a tiny, tight smile and withdrew her hand. Across the table. James typed something on his phone. Then leaned back in. Mia's giving a speech soon. I asked her to bring it up again. I gave him a small smile and didn't say no. James, Mia, Charlotte, and me, we'd been the closest of friends since college. James and Mia had built this company from the ground up. They'd gone through hell in the early years before things finally stabilized. Once the business was steady. James had talked me into joining as VP of Marketing and Communications. It was perfect for my background. And it meant we all got to hang out every day. Soon after, Mia was called up to the stage as one of the founders. The host asked if she had any big plans for the rest of the year. Mia stepped up to the mic with a bright smile. Her eyes crinkling into half-moons. She pretended to think for a second, tilting her head playfully to build suspense. Then she clasped her hands in front of her chest and announced to the whole room. Next month, I'm getting married. Cheers and whistles exploded through the crowd. She glanced over at our table. Her gaze softening when it landed on James. Warm and utterly sincere. We're having the wedding on a tropical island. Here's to a lifetime of love. Side by side with my James. Laughs and applause thundered through the room. James's eyes glistened. So cheesy. He muttered. But he was smiling. Then Mia shifted gears. Her eyes landing directly on Charlotte. She held out a hand. Bright and hopeful. What about you? Doctor, Charlotte. Wanna join us? My throat tightened suddenly. All the spotlight swung over to our table. Every eye in the room turned to Charlotte. Our friends were leaning forward, ready to cheer and congratulate us. The sound tech had the wedding song queued up, just waiting to hit play. The moment felt so tender, so full of promise. I turned to look at Charlotte. All the hope I'd tried to push down came rushing back. Bright and tight in my chest. But under all that expectation, Charlotte just smiled and shook her head. Her tone was light, casual, like she was turning down a coffee run. Marriage isn't something you rush into on a whim. You two go ahead. I'm in no hurry. Her voice was still soft, still gentle, but it felt like a glass wall had dropped between us, polite, distant, impenetrable. When she'd said it that plainly, Mia couldn't push further. She pressed her lips together, disappointed, and dropped her hand. A second later she was all bright smiles again, finishing the rest of her speech. All the while, thrumming hope in my chest went still. Right then, all that was left was quiet. And a dull, lingering ache. A few tables over, Ethan glanced back at me. A faint, smug smile playing on his lips. He watched me like he was enjoying the show. His eyes bright with triumph and challenge. I just gave him a small nod. I wasn't about to let his petty little stares ruin my night. For the rest of the evening, James flat out ignored Charlotte. Whenever their eyes accidentally met, he'd scowl like he'd tasted something sour. Mia was the only one keeping the conversation going, doing her best to keep things from getting too awkward. After the event ended, she followed Charlotte to the door in her heels, grabbing her wrist and giving it a playful shake. You, she muttered quietly, are way too stubborn for your own good. Charlotte just smiled, non-committal. When we pulled out of the parking garage, we saw Ethan standing by the building entrance. The night wind pressed his shirt tight against his frame, showing off the lean, broad build of a guy his age. One hand was in his pocket, the other scrolling lazily through his phone. Casual, cool, deliberate. Charlotte rolled down the window. Ethan looked up, his face lighting up, and strode over to lean in the open window. Charlotte, what are you still doing here? Can't get a ride? It's too late. No drivers are picking up. He shrugged, helpless. Charlotte glanced at me, then said, we'll give you a lift. Ah. I don't want to impose. Liam's right there. Ethan scratched the back of his head, grinning, but he didn't step back an inch. It's no trouble. We're heading the same way anyway, Charlotte said. She turned to me, her voice soft. Your place is closer. I'll drop you off first, then take him home. I glanced at her and nodded. The whole ride, Ethan talked nonstop, chattering about everything and nothing. When he got excited, He'd gesture with his hands. And every now and then his arm would brush Charlotte's shoulder. She didn't mind. She didn't flinch or pull away. She just smiled. Fond and amused. Like she was humoring an overexcited kid. I listened to all the names I didn't recognize. Watched how easy and close they were with each other. And for the first time, I felt like the third wheel. Like I was the one who didn't belong. When I got out of the car, Charlotte leaned out the window and called after me. Go on up. I'll be right back after I drop him off. I didn't say anything. Just nodded again. But as I walked toward the building, my steps slowed without me meaning them to. Something made me turn around. Glance back at the car. It was stopped at a red light. The white sedan idling at the crosswalk. Through the window, I could see Ethan had moved up to the passenger seat. He was leaning toward Charlotte, talking animatedly, his hands flying. Charlotte laughed as she listened, reaching up to tuck a wind-tousled strand of hair behind her ear. And Ethan reached over, natural as breathing, and tucked it back for her. She didn't pull away. She just lowered her eyes. The soft curve of her smile warm and gentle. Like sunlight on water. The light turned green. The car pulled forward and drove away. As soon as I got inside, I started packing. I folded my clothes neatly and set them in a suitcase. Then my hand hit something hard. Tucked in the very back of the closet, a small metal tin. I opened it. Inside lay a hand-braided leather cord necklace, strung with a tiny silver seashell. It was the gift I'd given Charlotte when I asked her out. Back in college. I'd been so nervous my voice shook as I shoved the box at her. Charlotte. I don't have much money right now. This is for you. For now. But I promise you, someday, I'm gonna take you to see the real ocean. Charlotte stared down at the necklace for a long, quiet minute. Then she looked up at me. Her eyes soft and sure. I believe you, Liam. She took the necklace out of the box, slipped it onto her wrist, and held it up to the sunlight, turning it this way and that. Then she smiled. That smile was the moment I fell for her. Completely and irreversibly. I'd sworn to myself then that I'd keep that promise. No matter what. I ran my thumb over the worn silver shell. It was cold under my fingertips. Beneath the tin, tucked under the lining, was an old photograph. A group photo of the four of us. We'd taken it on a trip. In front of an old medieval church. In the picture, Mia was hanging all over James. Her skirt fluttering in the wind. Charlotte stood quiet beside me. Her head tilted just a little. A soft, calm smile on her face. We were all so young. Right at the best years of our lives. I still remembered that day. Sunlight streamed through the tall stained glass windows. Warm and golden where it fell on us. Mia had tilted her head back to stare at the domed ceiling. Awestruck. Just standing here feels like my soul's getting cleaned. Right. We should just get married here. How fancy would that be? I'd shaken my head. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. But it feels too heavy. Too quiet. If I ever get married, I want it to be by the ocean. Blue water. Bright sky open. And warm. And free. Charlotte had turned to me then. A small smile tugging at her lips. She didn't gush about it like Mia did. She just tugged gently on my sleeve. Her voice quiet. Almost solemn. Okay. It's a promise. Mia had bounded over then. Grinning. Then we'll all do it. All four of us. On a tropical island. You too. And me and James. She slung an arm over each of our shoulders. Swaying back and forth. Deal. Whoever backs out is a loser. Pinky promise. We'd all stacked our hands on top of each other. And made that vow. It sounds silly now. But I'd wanted that first time to feel special. I'd had so many chances to go to the coast over the years. But I'd always said no. I'd never seen the ocean at all. I'd wanted my first time to be with Charlotte. In a wedding dress. Standing right beside me. Holding hands. Both of us smiling. Happy. And now here she was. Brushing it off like it was nothing. Complaining about crowds like that was the real reason she wouldn't go. The front door clicked. I heard keys in the lock. Charlotte was home. I wiped my face. Shoved everything back where I'd found it. And went to sit on the couch. Pretending to scroll through my phone like nothing was wrong. She kicked off her shoes as she walked in. Already explaining. Ethan coming tonight was a last-minute thing. There was an emergency surgery this afternoon. And he scrubbed in. Stood there for hours. Plus he doesn't get along with his family. So he usually stays late at the hospital anyway. I just invited him along to be nice. She always had a reason. Always had an explanation. I didn't look up. Okay, I said. Flat and calm. Charlotte sighed in relief and headed to the bathroom to shower. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was the bridal boutique. Hi, Mr. Carter. The suits you and Mr. Walker picked out yesterday are ready. Just like you requested. When would you like to come in for a fitting? Will your fiancé be joining you? I had it on speakerphone. And the voice carried loud and clear through the quiet living room. The bathroom door opened. Charlotte stepped out in a bathrobe. Water still dripping from her hair. She'd clearly heard every word. Her face went cold. All softness gone. She stared at me in silence. Disappointment sharp in her eyes. She walked over and stood in front of me. Her voice quiet but sharp. Every word cutting. Liam. Why do you always have to be so selfish? I hung up the phone and looked up at her. Is marriage a one-person thing? Have you ever stopped to think about how I feel? I asked it softly. Almost gently. We made a promise. Remember? Charlotte stared at me for a long, heavy silence. Then she shook her head. Her voice was calm. But it cut like a dull knife. Slow and raw. You're being ridiculous. I don't have time for some island wedding. Take the suit back tomorrow. The next day. Charlotte told me she was leaving. She was heading to Boston for a month-long medical symposium. And she'd be running surgical training workshops for interns while she was there. After all these years together. I knew the truth. She was running away. James and Mia's wedding was less than a month away. By the time she got back, it would be long over. She'd skip their wedding too. Just to avoid marrying me. I didn't say a word the whole drive to the airport. Ethan was already waiting at security with his suitcase. When he saw me, he grinned and nodded. Hey, Liam. Don't worry. I'll take good care of Charlotte this month. I'll make sure she eats on time and gets enough sleep. Promise. I smiled back. Good. She's all yours. As she turned to walk away, I couldn't stop myself. I called her name. Charlotte. She stopped and turned. Looking back at me through the crowd. I stared at that face I'd known for 10 years. And my eyes burned. I forced a smile. My voice so quiet it was almost to myself. Goodbye. It was so loud around you's announcements. Conversations. A baby crying. All blending together into a wall of noise that swallowed my words whole. She didn't hear. She frowned slightly. Mouthed what? At me. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. Something must have shown on my face. Because hesitation flickered across hers as she watched me go. She had this strange feeling like after this trip, we'd never see each other again. Ethan tapped her on the back from behind, hurrying her along. Come on. Charlotte. We're gonna be late for boarding. She stood there a moment longer. Until I vanished into the crowd. Then she turned and walked through security. After leaving the airport, I went to an amusement park. Alone. It wasn't a weekend. So the place was quiet. Almost empty. I stood by the carousel and watched the horses go round and round. Again and again. On our first real date, Charlotte had dragged me onto this very ride. The line had been long. The crowd thick. But it was one of the only free things there. We'd been so happy. She'd picked 2 horses side by side, one pale blue, one pure white. The music started. And the carousel began to spin. I love this, she'd said. The feeling of riding next to someone. Going forward together. Between the rises and falls of the horse, she'd reached for my hand. I'd taken it. Of course. Her fingers had been cool. But they'd laced through mine without a single second of hesitation. Knowing you're right beside me. Moving forward together. That's the happiest I ever feel. Ding dong. The music stopped. The carousel slowed to a halt. After all those spins. You end up right back where you started. I sat alone on the pale blue horse. The white one beside me was empty. I stepped off the platform. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was James. We're heading to the island tomorrow to lock in the venue and the schedule. You sure about this? I looked up. A crack had split the heavy gray clouds, letting through a sliver of bright, clear blue sky. I'm sure. Tomorrow. I was going to keep my promise. My fiancée was Amelia Hayes. We'd gone to high school and college together. I'd known her for years. She'd cared about me for a long time. But out of respect for my relationship with Charlotte, she'd always kept her distance. It wasn't until the day of the company raffle, after she'd heard what happened, that she told me how she felt. We met up with James and Mia on the island. The ocean wind was strong, cool and salty and fresh. Mia looped her arm through Amelia's, her voice sheepish and apologetic. Amelia, I'm so sorry about before. I had you all wrong. I used to talk so much trash about you behind your back. From now on, Liam's all yours. Take good care of him. Amelia was wearing a simple white button-down and blue jeans. Her sleeves rolled up to show her forearms. She looked sharp, bright and warm, the kind of person you wanted to be around. She smiled softly at me as apology. Actually, I should be thanking you both. She looked over at me, her eyes gentle. I've been adrift for so long, lost in the fog with no compass. You two finally let me come ashore. The tension melted away. James laughed out loud. Man, you're so much better than cold, distant Charlotte ever was. At the name, the air went still for a beat. Mia stood there sipping her juice, stirring her straw slowly. She nudged my arm quietly, out of the corner of her mouth. You're really sure about this? You don't want to give Charlotte one more chance? 10 years is a long time. Maybe she didn't finish. James shot her a sharp, disapproving look. Mia stuck out her tongue and went quiet. I smiled, but didn't answer. I just looked out at the horizon, where the sea met the sky. We stayed on the island until the wedding. Amelia was a multilingual tour guide, so she had a few international cruise shifts to cover. But whenever she was free, she'd rush back to help me pick out venues, design invitations, run all the little errands. We were busy, but happy. One night, I stood looking out at the moonlit ocean. So this is the sea, I said. Shame we won't have a view this nice back home. Amelia was peeling a grape for me. She laughed and held the fruit up to my lips. The ocean's just the sky, fallen down onto the land. Look up at the sky. And you're looking at the sea too. I bit into the grape. Sweet, bright juice burst across my tongue. As the days passed, we grew closer and closer. Mia adored her. The two of them would huddle together gossiping, their bright laughter carrying through the warm air. The night before the wedding, the wind was soft and the waves hummed quiet against the shore. James and I sat side by side on the sand, each holding a beer. Liam. Yeah. Honestly, I was worried at first. He took a long drink, his voice gruff. I was scared you were marrying someone you didn't love just to get back at her, that you'd regret it for the rest of your life. I turned to look at him, but didn't say anything. But now I know I was wrong. He looked up at the sky, his eyes bright with starlight. The way she looks at you, everything she does for you. I can tell. She really loves you. You matter to her. He looked back at me, dead serious. Be happy, Liam. You deserve it. I clinked my beer bottle against his. We all will. Tomorrow. I'd put on my suit and walk toward the girl who'd finally chosen to drop anchor in my ocean. For a whole month, Charlotte couldn't reach me. Every call went straight to the cold, automated voicemail. Every text bounced back, marked with a red exclamation point. She sat on her hotel bed, the screen glowing in her hand, and had no idea what to do. Finally, she sighed and set the phone down. She wasn't angry. At least, that's what she told herself. She was just disappointed. I'd always been the reasonable one. She couldn't understand why I was blowing things so out of proportion this time. She knew that once she got home, all she'd have to do was soften her tone a little, and I'd pull her into my arms and forgive her. Just like always. That's how it had always worked. But this time, she thought I'd gone too far. I needed time to cool off on my own. There was a knock at the door. It was Ethan. He was wearing a plain black t-shirt, his hair still slightly damp fresh out of the shower. He smiled and held out a drink when he saw her. Hey, you barely touched dinner tonight. Got you something to drink. Get some sugar in you. Charlotte took the bottle. Thanks. You should get some rest too. Can't sleep. Ethan glanced at the glowing laptop screen behind her and frowned a little. Don't stay up too late. Okay. We've got meetings all day tomorrow. Okay. Good night. Charlotte closed the door softly. set the drink on the desk, and went back to staring blankly at her computer. 2 days later, Charlotte was going through paperwork when her phone rang. The second she answered, a familiar voice started complaining on the other end. Charlotte Bennett. Have you gotten too big for your britches? We don't see each other much after graduation. Sure. But we were roommates for 3 years. You couldn't invite me to your wedding. I only found out 'cause I saw Liam's posts. Charlotte froze. Her hand tightened around the phone, trembling a little. What posts? My wedding. What are you talking about? Send them to me. Let me see. Sophia must have picked up on her tone, because she suddenly sounded unsure. Her voice wavering. Oh. Okay. Okay. I'll send you the screenshots right now. A few seconds later, several images popped up. Charlotte tapped to enlarge them. The first, endless, breathtaking blue ocean, stretching to the horizon. The second, sunset flooding through a hotel floor-to-ceiling window, gilding the whole room in gold. The third, a tower of champagne flutes, stacked high. The fourth, a photo of me and James, both in our wedding suits, grinning. The fifth, me standing alone on the beach, the wind tangling my hair, my shoulders broad and steady as a tree. Charlotte stared at that photo of my back for a long, long time. Something cold and heavy settled in her chest, slow and icy, like someone pouring ice water right into her heart. This time, he means it. But so what? She hated this. Hated feeling pressured, forced into a corner. Her fingers tapped the screen. She blocked my number, blocked my social media. After a second's thought, she pulled up James's chat too. A moment later, she deleted his contact as well. When it was done, she turned off her phone and flipped it face down on the desk. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Days slipped by. Only 3 days left until Mia's wedding. Boston was quiet. Nothing happened. I never called from a different number. None of our mutual friends reached out to beg her to F9 things. Even Mia had gone radio silent, like she'd vanished off the face of the earth. Charlotte sat in her office, watching the sky darken outside the window. That calm, steady resolve of hers was starting to crack. Beneath it, something sharp and anxious was creeping in. The symposium was wrapping up anyway. She packed her bags and booked the earliest flight home. She'd go back first, catch up on all the work piling up at the hospital. Then she'd fly to the island, find me, and figure out what the hell was going on. As the plane took off, Charlotte leaned back in her seat and stared at the pale clouds below, making plans in her head. If he apologized first, if he backed down from all this, then she'd say yes. 10 years was a long time. She couldn't just throw all that away. Not after how much I'd cared, how hard I'd tried. Someone as loyal as me wouldn't take it well. When her flight landed, Charlotte didn't waste a second. She went straight to the hospital. And by the time she finished catching up on everything, it was late at night. For the first time ever, she put in for 3 days leave. She stepped outside the hospital doors. The night air was cool. She was halfway down the steps, booking a flight to the island on her phone, when a hand reached out and pressed down on her screen. It was Ethan. He stood at the bottom of the steps, looking up at her, his brow furrowed, dead serious. Charlotte, you're going to find Liam right now. My probation review is in 3 days. If you're not there, I don't know if I can do it. I'm scared I'll fail. Charlotte cut him off, her tone final. Hospital policy says no one can take the test for you. You're good enough to pass on your own. You don't need me. Ethan looked away, his voice quiet. You know how things are with my family. If I fail, I have to go back home. Charlotte. He didn't finish. But she got the message. This boy who was always so cocky, so full of energy, his shoulders were tight, tense with fear. She sighed, and lowered her phone. Fine. Focus on your review. I'll wait until you're done before I leave. Ethan's head snapped up, a huge grin spreading across his face. Thanks, Charlotte. Charlotte stared at that smile, and for a second she was somewhere else. She remembered the carousel. All those years ago. I'd looked at her just like that, bright, warm, full of pure, unguarded joy. Back at her apartment, she splashed cold water on her face in the bathroom, trying to shake off the exhaustion. She stared at her pale reflection in the mirror and took a deep breath, forcing down the anxiety twisting in her chest. As soon as Ethan finished his test, she'd leave for the island. She'd find me. Stand right in front of me. She'd tell me she'd put in for marriage leave at the hospital. That she was ready to have that wedding with me. It wasn't that she didn't want to get married. She just hated being pushed. Hated feeling forced into a decision. It only made her pull away. But she'd forgotten. I'd never been the one pushing. I'd just been waiting. Waiting. Again and again. Until I couldn't wait anymore. When Charlotte got home, she spotted the small metal tin sitting on the coffee table. That necklace Esht kept it hidden in the back of her closet for years. How did it get out here? She opened it and took out the silver seashell. All those old memories rushing back. A faint, sharp ache pricked at a quiet place in her heart. She'd never wanted to see me this badly in her life. On the day of Ethan's exam, Charlotte waited outside the testing room for hours. When he walked out, he gave her a big, easy grin and a victory sign. Charlotte nodded once, then turned and walked away. She'd booked a flight for that afternoon. Ethan chased after her, saying he wanted to come too, to thank me in person. Charlotte said no. This was between her and me. No one else needed to be involved. But he insisted on driving her to the airport. And she didn't argue. At the terminal, they had a while before boarding. Ethan went to get coffee. Charlotte sat in the waiting area, glancing at the time on her phone over and over, her fingers twisting the seashell necklace around her neck. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was Mia, the woman who'd been silent for a whole month, calling out of nowhere. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. She hesitated, then answered. The line was loud. She could hear a band playing the wedding march. The murmur of a crowd. But Mia's voice came through clear as day. She must have stepped somewhere quiet, because she was whispering. Charlotte. Yeah. Don't bother coming. Charlotte's fingers tightened so hard around the phone her knuckles went white. What do you mean? Mia was quiet for a long time. Then she said it. Liam got married this morning. On the island. The bride's Amelia, you know her. He asked me to tell you. He hopes you're happy. She could hear James's voice in the background. And then Mia hung up. Fast. Charlotte sat there in the airport chair, her arms slowly falling to her side. The phone slipped against her dress and went dark. There were so many sounds all around her. Announcements. Footsteps. Voices, but she couldn't hear any of it. Ethan came back with 2 coffees. When he saw her face, he stopped short. Charlotte. Charlotte didn't say anything. She just slowly bowed her head. The seashell necklace at her throat glinted faint silver under the terminal lights. She was too late. 10 years too late. A whole month too late. Too late for the day he'd finally stopped waiting. Ethan walked over, set the coffees down on the empty seat beside her, and crouched down in front of her. Hey. What's wrong? Charlotte lifted her head and looked at his young, worried face. His eyes were clear, full of concern. And suddenly she remembered. I'd looked at her just like that. Once. When she'd stood in the oar, calm and steady, finishing her first solo surgery. When she'd walked down the hospital halls in her white coat, and everyone stopped to greet her. When she'd come home late after staying up all night with patient charts, complaining about how tired she was. I'd always been watching her. And in my eyes, there had only ever been her. Ethan. She said. Quiet. Am I not pretty anymore? Ethan shook his head hard, his voice rough. No. You're the prettiest person I know. Charlotte looked at him. And a tiny, sad smile tugged at her lips. Tears slid down her cheeks. Right along the curve of that smile. She stood up and twisted the necklace once around her finger. Let's go home. Ethan stood and took her bag from her. Charlotte didn't give up. She couldn't even explain why she clung on so tight. 10 years was such a long time. Long enough that she didn't know how to live in a world where I wasn't there. She put the seashell necklace back on. Every night before bed, she'd run her fingers over the little shell. Like she was making sure those 10 years had been real. Not just some dream. Every day after work, she'd drive to my office building and park across the street. She'd sit in her car and stare at the glass facade, watching the lights turn on, then turn off one by one. If the lights on my floor were still on, she'd sit there and watch, unable to look away. She'd picture me in there, working late, frowning slightly at my computer, her fingers moving fast and steady over the keyboard. She wrote me letters. Too. She'd tear blank pages from her medical notebooks. Grab and use prescription pads. Any scrap of paper she could find. She'd stuff them into envelopes and mail them to my office. The first one was 10,000 words long. She started with the day we met in college. She wrote about how nervous I'd been when I asked her out, sweating through my shirt. About how my hands had shaken when I gave her that necklace. Do you remember any of this? She'd asked. The second letter was shorter. She told me she'd started wearing the necklace again. If I wanted it back, she'd bring it to me. The third one was just a few words. I miss you, Liam. But I never wrote back. After Ethan transferred to a different department, he came to see her a few times. She was always polite. Talked to him about work for a minute. Then saw him out. The last time. He stood in the doorway for a long time. His hand on the frame. Are you avoiding me? She looked at him. Her gaze gentle but distant. No. Just focus on your work. Be good to yourself. Ethan didn't say anything else. He gave her one last look and left. She didn't know what she was waiting for. Anymore. Maybe just a chance. A chance to start over. Or a chance to say goodbye for real. That chance came much later than she'd expected. And it hurt far worse than she'd ever imagined. It was a late autumn evening. Charlotte had parked across from my office like usual. And she'd just turned off the engine when two people walked out the front doors. Me and Amelia. Almost on instinct. She pushed open her car door and stood there, staring at us from across the street. I looked calmer, lighter, than she'd ever seen me. There was a soft, contented look on my face that had never been there before. Charlotte had always known I was handsome. She'd known it from the first time she saw me, back in college. But she'd never thought I could look like this bright, alive. Like the whole world lit up around me. She could barely look away. She was about to step forward, to cross the street, when I turned and gently guided Amelia ahead of me. That's when Charlotte saw it, the soft curve of Amelia's stomach, just starting to show. I leaned down and said something to her. Amelia looked up, laughing, and playfully punched my arm. I laughed too, and reached up to tuck a windblown strand of hair behind her ear. Then I lifted my head, and my eyes met Charlotte's across the street. I only paused for a second. No surprise. No panic. None of the feelings she'd hoped to see. I said something to Amelia. Amelia glanced over at Charlotte, nodded slightly, then got in the car by herself. I walked across the street toward Charlotte, and stopped 3 feet away. Charlotte. Long time no see. Charlotte opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her throat felt tight, stuffed full of cotton. She stared at me, drinking in the sight of my face, gilded warm by the setting sun. You. Her voice was rough, barely audible. Congratulations. On the baby. Thanks. 3 months along now. Something shattered in Charlotte's chest. Sharp and cold. Like thick winter ice. Cracking under weight. Slow and loud and final. I glanced at her. Like I was surprised she was taking it so calmly. Then I smiled. Soft and at peace. Thank you. A few seconds of silence passed. Charlotte. It's over between us. I looked at her. Honest and gentle. I'm happy now. Really happy. You should start building a life of your own too. I wish you all the best. Charlotte stood there, frozen, as my car merged into the stream of traffic and vanished into the dusk. This time, she didn't run after me. She knew. Some distances were too big to cross. After that, she pieced together bits of my life from the little things Mia let slip. Amelia and I settled down on the island permanently. Amelia had switched to shorter cruise routes so she could spend more time at home. I opened a little specialty coffee shop right on the beach. Warm and cozy and one of a kind. Shelves lined with books. Little trinkets Amelia had picked up from all over the world. Every day was filled with the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of the waves. James and Mia visited us on the island every now and then. Every time they came back, Mia would stop by Charlotte's place. She'd kick off her heels, curl up on the couch with a pillow, and chatter away about how I was doing. James would lean against the doorframe, silent, never saying a word, never looking at Charlotte. Mia brought a photo once. In it, I was wearing a soft linen shirt, sleeves rolled up casual, one arm around Amelia, the other holding our swaddled baby. I was smiling so bright. Like I'd finally found the ocean I'd been looking for all those years. For the baby's 1-month celebration. Mia went out to the island again. She posted dozens of photos online. One of them was the three of us. Sitting on the rocks by the water. Me holding the baby. Sunlight fell over all of us. Amelia and I were both looking down at the baby. Our faces soft with love. Amelia's head was on my shoulder. And I'd turned my face to press a gentle kiss to the top of her hair. The three of us. Perfect and quiet. Like a painting. Peaceful. Happy. Whole. Charlotte stared at that photo for a long time. She'd always thought we had all the time in the world. She'd always thought I'd be there. Right beside her. Forever. How had we ended up here? Strangers. With nothing left between us. She got stuck on that question. Turning it over and over in her head. After a while. She moved. She moved somewhere no one knew her name. They say time heals all wounds. Maybe it does. But every night. She still dreams of that blue ocean. She dreams of the man in the wedding suit. Standing on the sand. Smiling at her. And then he says, I waited for you, Charlotte. For so long. And then she wakes up. Staring at the dark window. Her chest throbbing with a dull, heavy ache. She thinks she's trapped here. Stuck forever in this sad, quiet ending. Because the man she loved for 10 years has found someone who chose to sail into his ocean. And she's left all alone. Standing on an empty, endless shore. With nothing left. And no way to go back. Hey there. Could you rate this story in the comments? Use a scale of 1 to 10. Please, I am begging you. It really means a lot to me. And if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit follow.